We seem to be at a strange point in history where things are either too short or too long. Hordes of boorish boomers ball-ache about the youngsters watching those ticking clocks and rotting their minds. They ain't got no attention span anymore as they endlessly scroll through one short content blast to the face after another. I don't do TikTok, but I do collect weird guys on Instagram, so I do get the appeal even if I do hate myself while I'm doing it. Now I don't know what the fuck this is either, but drink in that fucking awesome hair. At the same time, other entertainment seems to be getting longer and longer in the form of films and video games. Decrepit old man blowhard gamers like myself lament how insanely long games are these days. Bloated bullshit open worlds stuffed with padding and busy work grind. And this is coming from an admitted MMO enthusiast. Somewhere along the way, those suited fucks with the money decided that this is what everyone wanted, that was what was required to justify the full AAA box price. And like good little dogs, we have been trained to think that that is what we want. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of it. Now, I don't usually go in for looking back and clinging to nostalgia and the past, whining how things were better in my day. I believe in forward progression of a sort, even if I don't like the result. The world changes and you are not the main character and you are not the target audience anymore. Your time has passed, even if the franchise of your childhood endures. But allow me to be a big fat hypocrite whilst I do a bit of looking back of my own, back on a time in games when you didn't have to sink 60 plus hours into a game to see the credit roll. One such game for me is Space Marine. I fucking love that game. I remember seeing the adverts on TV. Yes, that's right, actual scheduled TV. Who remembers that? I remember buying it for my Xbox 360 and playing it through with a friend, passing the controller back and forth as we worked our way through the campaign. Memories. I've replayed that game numerous times since 2011, and a big part of my love for it and its replayability for me is its length. A tight, enjoyable 10-ish hour romp, stamping on orcs' heads and being all big and meaty and shit, rocking about the place as a giant chonky space fascist. Fantastic. They really don't make them like that anymore. Oh, what's that yonder, coming over the hill? Why, it couldn't be. It is. It's Space Marine 2. Well, piss my eyes out of my fucking face. Holy shit, it is only the game that I've waited for like ever. Or since 2011, which is basically forever. What's that, how long to beat? It's about 10-ish hours? Fuckety fucky fuck, take my money. Now okay, I know I'm a bit late to the party here, but there's been a load of other games going on and I was playing WoW when it came out, and whilst I haven't exactly got my chubby little fingers on the pulse, I have finally indulged myself, and oh boy, what a game. We pick back up with our square-headed hero, Titus, and we play through an intro plus tutorial as part of the Death Watch, where he is serving some part of his penance for his actions in the first game. This is explained in a roundabout way, but playing the first game is probably advised for full enlightenment as to Titus and his fabulous warp-resistant powers. But our intro finishes with Titus being killed by a Carnifex, and then being rebuilt Lee Majors style. One for the kids. Anyway, in what should be a tad disappointing, when I think about it, Space Marine 2 follows a very similar format to Space Marine. Fly down to planet, stamp all over the xenos threat for a while, and then chaos turns up to throw a massive spanner in the works, and suddenly nothing else matters, and off we go to defeat the big bad. But while it does follow the same formula, everything is pumped to the max. This game is much more cinematic in its scope and indeed its scale, and there are some real set pieces towards the end. The first game couldn't provide anything close to the spectacle of a Tyranid swarms flowing over the landscape in the distance like a white river of death Any attempt at such thing would have made my Xbox 360 go supernova. And talking about things going nova, this game may have rang the first bell to indicate to me that it might be time to upgrade my PC, as the poor old girl strained under the weight of all those nids. After a fair amount of tinkering with the graphics settings, I managed to find a compromise that allowed me to play the game smoothly enough. Praise the Omnissiah. But again, I see this as a testament to the overall quality of the gameplay, story and its delivery of both, that even though I essentially had to nerf the graphics back 10 years to the equivalent of Space Marine 1 levels, I was still gripped and entertained until the very end. Which is no mean feat for me personally. If you have watched any of my other videos, you may have heard me talk about my brain being a bit broken and my inability to concentrate long enough to take in slow-moving, drawn-out epic stories. And if I have to read anything, then forget it. But that isn't the case here, as we are back in classic story campaign mode of yesteryear, where you play part of the story and then you are spoon-fed cutscenes like a sweet little baba. And it is never too long before the next dopamine hit is administered, and so on for the next 10 or so hours. Perfect pacing. Now, I'm not a scholared nerd of the Warhammer 40k lore that I would be able to reel off particular names of famous Astartes or anything, but I do watch a lot of lore videos, and so I do have a general grasp on what the various factions are, different squadrons and the varied xenos threats. But I still wonder how much of my enjoyment of this game is tied to the fact that I recognise things as they are happening. Like, if I didn't have that baseline knowledge, would I enjoy it quite so much? Certainly I think the uninitiated would enjoy the feel of the gameplay, parrying and dodging, blasting big guns and going apeshit with your chainsword, but they certainly wouldn't get the little rush as you sort of say to yourself, fuck, it's one of those, or holy shit, is that where we are? I won't go into any detail about specifics, as I don't want to spoil any moments for people that happen in the back half of the game, but I do wonder how many new fans this game generated. I think if the advertising could get someone to try it, providing they knew what kind of game they were getting into, I could see people Google searching a lot of 40k topics and starting their journey into the fandom. Unlike the first game, you return to your ship, the battle barge, between missions, which acts as a central hub. And whilst you are there, there are all sorts of little tidbits and set dressing going on in the background. With Space Marines walking about or praying to the chaplain, Mechanicus berating servitors with bad backs, refusing them painkillers and threatening to make use of them in other ways. Or tending to a dreadnought just to the side. Evidence of polish and the extra care that has been taken to flesh out the 40k universe. And for the old heads, the beleaguered and impoverished die-hard fans, while there will be plenty to excite, I understand there are some niggling nitpicks around some parts of the story, like the age of characters in relation to past events and so on, but overall, I haven't heard any real negative feedback. And hey, overall, it is probably cheaper than the plastic crack addiction, but then again, both those can and do exist alongside each other, so scratch that, and I guess you'll just have to make peace with your empty wallets. But above all, I really think that the choice to not go mental on the story length, to not succumb to the temptation to try and stuff as much shit in it as possible, is its biggest strength. Having a shorter story allows you to polish more, to improve the quality of what you have, to trim the fat off. Like when you watch a series on Netflix and you think, that could have really been a good 3-part miniseries rather than stretched thin over 10 episodes. I know I am not the only one who thinks this. I hear many a pundit, games journalist or content creator bemoaning the length of games or triumphantly celebrating a game when they hear that the runtime is fairly short. This could well be an age-related thing. I probably do watch and listen to more older people who perhaps don't have the time in their lives to dedicate hour upon hour to a game. If you are younger, do let me know if you have different views on the lengths of game. I'm interested to know whether your being further from the grave affects this. Is it like going to a buffet versus paying for a high quality meal? Does more actually equal more value? I know where I am on this, but as with everything subjective, everyone has a different opinion. A fine steak meal of superior quality is satisfying, but sometimes you do just want to stuff your face with endless slop. Anyway, for me personally, my take is what I say when I get dragged out to a pub as someone that doesn't drink, and I attempt to make an early exit while boozy friends slur in protest as I try to leave. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. Certainly the length of a game is a real blocker for me, a narrative game anyway. For example, I have been toying with the idea of going in on Dragon Age Veilguard recently, and the more I see of it and hear of it, the more tempted I am. I've tried all the previous games in the series and I'd probably played Origins the most, but I didn't really like any of them, to be honest. Well, they were fine, but I wasn't really jazzed on them. But apparently the combat is much more action orientated this time around, so I am tempted. But the one thing that is still holding me back is that it is a 30 to 60 hour game, which I know isn't really even that long a game in the modern age. But after the sweet Space Marine 2 experience, I am hesitant. And this does seem kind of crazy considering that I play a lot of MMORPGs, which are purpose designed for you to play them every day forever. But even with those, I get bored quickly and move between them to keep things fresh. But they are very different types of games. The one thing is for sure though is that I will be seeking out other shorter single player experiences in the future as a preference. You can always provide longevity to your compact story campaign by releasing other game modes beside it. For example, Space Marine 2 has the multiplayer online side missions and PvP. If you want to have true replayability, maybe games should think about incorporating one of my other favourite game genres, roguelikes, into their side offerings. Something like Vermintide 2 and the Chaos Wastes. Having said that though, you don't need to provide that feature at all. What is wrong with me playing the game through, enjoying it, putting it back on the metaphorical shelf, and then months or years down the line deciding to pick it up and play through it again? Just like I do with the original Space Marine. And once I had played through Space Marine 2, that's exactly what I did. I booted up Space Marine and started playing through it again, mainly because I just wanted to hear orcs shout Space Marine at me. God, I hope they release orc-based DLC for Space Marine 2. In one of the first videos I made on this channel, I spoke about Halls of Torment and the idea of a fair trade. I compared it to fish and chips. You hand over your money and get a filling, satisfying hot meal. A fair trade. Why can't games be more like that? I pay for Space Marine 2 and I consume it and then I am satisfied. Later they release DLC and I buy that and consume it. In general, I guess it's ultimately capitalism, consumerism and the requirement for game companies to always see the number go up and not just being content with just making a reasonable profit and existing as a broadly successful company. But that is a whole other pus-filled pimple on the larger ass that is the games industry, and one we don't need to get into here. I'll just say, support indie devs where possible. As Space Marine 2 sold quite well, perhaps this will go some way to changing attitudes towards the type of games we get, but I won't hold my breath. Back to the game itself. I always wondered what a sequel would be like, and on my first playthrough, I didn't really feel like too much had changed other than the graphical updates. More processing power and a couple of extra combat mechanics. It felt very similar and I was happy with that being the case. But immediately going back and starting to play through the first game made it even more obvious the improvements they made to the mechanical side of the game, as well as just utilising updates in available technology. I mean, let's be clear, it's not made by the same people, so it's also impressive that they managed to nail that feel whilst still improving it. I'm actually replaying the game now almost immediately after finishing it. I'm not even trying to beat the game at a harder difficulty, I just want to experience it again. I'm not even bothered by the online co-op missions, which serve to flesh out some of the story by allowing you to play through as a different team of Ultramarines who are running missions in parallel to Titus's crew. I may go back and play those later down the line when I feel like it. I just want to experience the story again, like I might watch a film a few times in quick succession if I particularly like it. Then I will uninstall the game, make space for something else, and maybe in a year come back and play it through again. Partly because hard drive space is at its premium as much as anything, but still. I certainly can't wait to push all the settings up to max once I get a PC upgrade to bask in the sticky glory of Tyranid gore and viscera flying everywhere. I just cannot explain how satisfying I found the whole package, and how important it is that a piece of media doesn't outstay its welcome. In my last video about New World Eternum, I spoke about how I enjoy playing through the main game and levelling up, and how I would put the game back down and move on to something else. And while I did enjoy that process, towards the end I did find myself pushing forward purely to tick it off the list, rather than that I really wanted to see what was next and what the ending was. I got to level 65, but I didn't finish the Angry Earth expansion before I put it back down. It took me maybe 40 or so hours to get there, and whilst it is a different type of game, it didn't wrap up in a satisfactory way. I just sort of got bored of it and then stopped. Whereas Space Marine 2, there is no bad aftertaste, just great memories. No fatigue, no resentment, no grind, just a great story and a satisfying power fantasy to go with it. And the ending was one of the best series of sequences I have had in a video game for some time. They definitely learned lessons from the first game, where we kind of got an epic concept delivered to us through a QuickTime event. Several times it shifted into a higher gear, and I thought, oh, this is it, this is the final push. And then they pushed it up to another gear, and then another. I felt like I had worked for the ending, and that I was present in it. And while my face on the outside was like this, on the inside I was like this. The last time I felt this satisfaction when finishing a game was probably the System Shock remake, but only in Space Marine 2 you are ushered through the story, and I think I preferred that, as I never had to open a browser window and search a walkthrough or anything. I could just let myself flow down the river from one story beat to another, never having to break my immersion. So there we go. It's safe to say Space Marine 2 is not too short and it's not too long, it's just right. And I like that. Anyway, buy Space Marine 2, play Space Marine 2, enjoy Space Marine 2, and let's all pray to the Omnissiah that there will be more games like this in the future. And also Orc DLC.